Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to take a short call on the Weathertight Homes Resolution Services Amendment Bill. As my colleague Scott Simpson has already informed the House, a good, sensible bill that fixes up an anomaly which had been brought to our attention, and typical of this government. If there's a job to be done, we'll get it done and make sure that we deliver for people who need our support. But Mr. Speaker, I do have to start, if I may, with a retort on the previous speaker, William Seo, particularly what appears to me is an immense amount of crocodile tears. I'd just like to remind him perhaps of some of the history here. He talked around the 90s and into 2000s when we had a number of houses, some in Tauranga and obviously many in Auckland, that were impacted by the leaky home syndrome. And he talks about, in his view, the lack of speed in which our government has responded. Well, I'd like to remind him that it took 7 long years of the Labour Party before they put up a bill to get this sorted. And then once they got it passed in 2007, it took the national government to actually pass the financial assistance package to actually start ensuring that people who needed some financial support actually got it. So to stand here and do crocodile tears about the fact that this government doesn't care or doesn't know how to be able to put a proper solution in place is nonsense and doesn't get borne out by the facts, Mr. Seo. This government was the government that acted. This government is the government that stood beside the people of Auckland and Tauranga who needed financial assistance. And when the court said that there were a couple of anomalies that needed to be fixed, it is this government that has put this bill up and has pushed it through the select committee process, and now tonight have a piece of legislation, sir, which is actually going to deliver for those homeowners. That's right. And so, look, there are 70 homeowners who are going to, of course, benefit from this bill once it passes. And, of course, what is interesting that under the financial assistance package, since it's been in place, there's been 1,200 claims representing over 4,200 homes that have already been assessed as qualifying for the financial assistance package. What I think this bill shows is, there were 70 who had some potential opportunity to miss out in that process, and we have identified what those anomalies are, Mr. Speaker, and this bill seeks to address those. We have already heard tonight some of the two real key components that needed clarification through this piece of legislation. And the first relates to the term built, and I think most people in this House would understand why the various agencies and some initial view of the courts was that built would be classified as the point of final council inspection. That was largely intuitive, so you could understand why that was perceived to be the point of eligibility. But of course, the court case that came through resulted in a different interpretation, which now, of course, sits when the Code of Compliance is issued, and it is appropriate, therefore, that we make this amendment. It might sound small, it might sound very technical, but it is an amendment that enables those 70 homes to now be included in this process, if, of course, they meet all the other eligibility criteria. I think it is appropriate that, whilst we're having this conversation, we look at the merits of extending the expiry date. It makes sense. Clearly, when this was first promulgated, 23rd of July 2016 sounded a fair way away. Well, we're obviously pretty close to that now, so it makes sense that we actually make that adjustment, and as we have done so and will do so through this through the change in the expiry date clause. Mr. Speaker, it has been an interesting process. It's had a lot of support through the Select Committee, not a huge number of submissions, but it had a pretty strong support. It was very technical, and despite the rhetoric that we've already heard from a couple of the opposition speakers, when you strip it all back, they know this is good law. They know this is law that their constituents and their electorate support. It is what this government is doing and continues to do. When sensible things need to be done, we do them. If issues and anomalies need to be clarified, we sort them, and the people of New Zealand benefit with such an approach. I thoroughly support this bill, Mr Speaker, and commend it to the House.
Well done. Speaker.
Jamie Lee